Today, we are learning basketball with Tristan Pharis. He is a sports media photojournalist for the editor of Sea of Blue, the founder of Kentucky Insider. You can catch him at these Kentucky games, at the post-game conferences, just keeping you updated on all things blue up there. And before we dive in, how you doing today, Tristan?
I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you having me on, Ryan.
No doubt. I'm really excited to just dive in all things Kentucky today and hear a little bit about your story, your background into, your path into where you are today, and, any advice for anyone trying to follow a similar path before we dive into all things basketball.
For sure, for sure. Anybody that's interested in sports media, I hope they're passionate about it. It's not the easiest space to get into. It doesn't have the greatest pay to start out or anything like that. But so I kind of started my journey. I guess I was a Kentucky fan, born and raised. Obviously, got to the position where I'm at. But back in 2019, I actually went to college to go to PT school and graduated with an accounting degree, which makes no sense to how I got into sports media. But in 2019, I decided, you know what? I love Kentucky sports. I've wrote about them any chance I've gotten through school, essays and stuff like that. And I was like, let's give a website a shot. So after a lot of self-teaching, failures and getting there, I was able to kind of amass a little bit of a following, just being consistent and working hard. Those are my two biggest pieces of advice: to stay consistent. Because if you're able to give somebody a piece of news and they're able to share that, a friend or a family member, and that continues to grow and grow and grow, you just never know where it can take you. And it's kind of pretty cool. From a Kentucky fan, growing into Kentucky media, that's kind of how I got my way, just word of mouth and just working hard. So very appreciative of where I'm at now. I think it's been about 4 years since I've been credentialed. I do photo and media, so been pretty cool.
Hey, that's a super cool story, and I would love to hear a little more as well about what we were talking on a little before the podcast. Just the idea of like capturing sports photography, capture a moment from the live action of a game to just also correlate it to the stories itself, because it's just another. It's all encompassed in media, but like there are iconic sports photos just as much as there are iconic games, iconic moments, calls. Like all of this goes into it, and so our brains attached to that one memory, whether it's like a picture of it happening, a video of it happening, the call of it happening, and photos almost get underrated and get lost in all that as they become covers, they become other things too. But I would love to hear how you appreciate the photography element of the sports journalism and how you're able to correlate that into your stories to kind of, like we were saying, capture the moment of the event, for all time, and write up a summary of it or correlate the stats back to that moment.
Yeah, for sure. So I started and I was solely media, never been a photographer, never taken pictures, no experience whatsoever. And then it kind of got to the point where as my site was growing and my following was growing, I was like, I need pictures. And that's kind of was where it started. Like, I don't want to pay Getty Images $20 for this one picture. I don't want to pay here and there. So I was like, I need to invest in a camera. Like, felt like it would help me with post-game interviews, being able to record them. So just kind of, it started off very simple. And I think I bought my first, and now it wasn't an inexpensive camera. It was probably about $1,000 before a whole kit. But if you know anything about photography, it gets way, way up there. So that helped me get a kind of a start, helped me start videoing, started getting on the floor for some games. And the way sports media has gone, it's kind of really unfortunate. Most of the media, they get put in the higher level. They've kind of gotten, if you watch the NCAA tournament, that's kind of the only setting where the media is right beside the court. And that's something really cool about the tournament, but it kind of just sets an example of like what it used to be. And so as money's become more involved in college athletics, that media keeps getting raised and raised and raised so they can give those seats to donors and collect more money. And that's just the name of the game. But being a photographer, you get to be right beside the action. So you get to not only see and capture that emotion, but like feel it for yourself. So for example, I sat by the bench for the Seattle game, and that's probably the most emotion I've seen out of a game this season in terms of emotional moments, just because how drastic or dramatic that comeback was. You come back from like 16, 18 points. I sat on the Gonzaga bench for the first half and got to hear them talk some trash, and they were real confident going into halftime. And then I got flip side, sit beside the Kentucky bench in the second half, and really, there's just, I mean, if you're sitting 200 feet away, you're not capturing what these players are saying or what the coaches are trying to get them to do. It's just very hard. So being able to be that close to action has really helped me in terms of like being able to provide better content in terms of photos or video, but also things like this. I can talk about the team with more insight. I can obviously have more insight in my articles and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people kind of isolate themselves to one area or another. But if photography is something that interests you and just being close to capture that emotion, like you said, and those moments that people remember forever, definitely would recommend that.
Man, I didn't even realize the perks of having that photo badge as well. Getting some courtside action here and there because they got to be close for the best pictures.
Yeah.
So it makes that's some good insight just to how to get into media. Like look into all forms of media and look into everyone that they let in because you really do get some access and that even doubly so or more so just for being near the action. Like whether you're taking pictures or not, just being in ear distance of being able to hear the coach, the players, the way they, rally each other up or tear each other down. Like those are important aspects of who they are as people and players that you really don't hear or learn about through a screen or, up in the nosebleeds or wherever you end up sitting. Like you just really can't learn that without being in the gym and being within earshot. And it can be really hard the bigger the program gets to actually have that access. So being able to, learn in person about a player's like charisma and interactions with their teammates, their relationships, all of that really matters in trying to get to know, the person behind the player as well, and not just exactly how they are on the court. So it's, some underrated aspects there. And, diving into this season, this Kentucky team, let's start right off top with Mark Pope. Like he's made an incredible first impression. He's a fan favorite, captain of the 96 championship team in Kentucky. He's back after a lot of success everywhere he's gone as a coach, back to BYU. And, maybe we'll hit on his relationship with Jaxon Robinson there as well. It's interesting that he's the player has followed Mark Pope around from BYU to Kentucky. That's kind of shows, his influence and the impact he's made on some of these guys already. But just starting off, what's it been like this first season taking over for a household name like a legend like John Calipari that, has a very distinct style and reputation that follows him. And, the only other little thing I got to mention with Calipari is who gets the rights to that notion that you should always draft a Kentucky guard. Does that stay with Kentucky, or does Calipari kind of get to pull that with him to the next stop?
Kentucky's trying to claim it, but Calipari's trying to claim it too. I'll give it to Cal. He got the guys. He's one of the best recruiters in college basketball, so I'll give it to him. But yeah, it was just Kentucky has won one tournament game in the last 4 postseasons, so it was just kind of it was time, for lack of better words. Kind of the relationship is kind of like a divorce, is what a lot of people compared it to. But yeah, it just you go from Calipari, the Northeastern swagger, the arrogance, and confidence. He's one of the winningest coaches in college basketball, so it's not like he couldn't back it up. For Mark Pope, who may be one of the corniest coaches in college basketball, you can find his videos singing Hamilton. You can find videos where even a few years ago at BYU, he sent a video to one of Kentucky's events where he rips off his suit and he does the Cats chant with his old Kentucky jersey on. So it's been a big culture shock. You don't have the 5-star players that you become used to with Cal getting every year one and dones and going to the lottery. This team is a lot of people have called them misfits. Just because these are guys, if you would have told them a year ago that they'd be playing at the University of Kentucky, they would have probably called you crazy. You have Ainsley Almanor that played for Fairleigh Dickinson. Okay, so and he was about to commit to Siena before he got a call from Mark Pope. You had Amari Williams, who was playing for Drexel. So you just had a lot of players that. Now there was Jaxon Robinson and Otega Oweh that played in the Power Five, but the bulk of these players were just their journeys to where they got were just certainly improbable, and they understood that, showed appreciation for that. But Mark Pope, as a coach, he's been the first 24 hours when that decision was announced. I don't think many people were thrilled. You go from a coach that went to 4 Final Fours and 5 seasons to a coach that never won a national or NCAA tournament game. So that was the thing that a lot of people had to get over. But within 48 hours, you had a press conference that had 20,000 people in there, and that's just something that only Kentucky basketball can do. So it's been an injection of energy to kind of summarize it, but big culture change as well.
Yeah, and that's just incredible to hear about his process and that the change of personality I'm sure has been a lot. And the big point I wanted to strive home is like normally the next guy after the guy leaves is just like screwed before he starts, basically. Like it can be really hard to take over for a successful coach or a legend, especially in sports where you already have a short leash to start with. The fans are waiting for any reason to move on to the next guy after the next guy. They always want someone else, and Mark Pope has like stood up to the challenge, taken it, and ran with it. And I meant to pull this visual up while we were talking a little bit earlier, just to show a little bit of Kentucky's dominance in the draft and Calipari. This draft I actually made a little while back, writing a story, and just kind of shows that Kentucky has the second most number 1 NBA draft picks of any school in the entire NCAA, and only second to Duke. And that all came in that Calipari era. So just wanted to give them a quick shout to Towns and Anthony Davis and John Wall, just some of the legends that have gone through this program while Cal was here. And, Mark Pope hopes to continue that. And, there's a lot of really interesting talent on this team. I can't wait to dive into Otega Oweh. He's my guy for this draft. Like I think he's a first round pick to me. The top 100 prospects via ESPN actually has 5 different players for Kentucky, which we found through a website called A Sea of Blue. I'm not sure, maybe you've heard of it, but they shared this where all these guys are on kind of the outside looking in of the draft projections, but they're still all right there. Like you have 5 top 100 prospects, but none in the actual top 60 of getting drafted. So that leads me to think that maybe some of these guys will end up coming back and try to fix their stock that way. Obviously, some are seniors as well. So speaking of seniors, there was a big senior night the other night against LSU, and you got some tweets out as well with some interesting quotes that was just cool to see. Just what really makes this team special and different when it comes to the seniors that stuck around and these guys that are actually staying 3-4 years to like they used to, which made college basketball like feel a little more normalized in the household, where it just feels like college basketball at its best is when you really get to know the guys in the uniform for more than one semester, and you really learn about them as people and players and get to root for them and their development over the years. What makes this team so, special in that way?
For sure. I think what the most important thing that makes this team special is it kind of started in the summer. Mark Pope had 2 walk-ons on the roster. It was returning 0 contributors, so it just kind of started from there. But he went out and got pieces that fit. And there was 7 seniors. Now, Kirk Creesa, he had a seasoning injury, so he's got a medical red shirt. So take him out 6 seniors that contributed. And I think that's the big thing is Kentucky hasn't had seniors that contribute like that in quite some time now. A few years ago, they had about 3 or 4, Oscar Shibwe, Sabree Wheeler, Jacob Toppin, but none to the effect of what these guys have. I mean, Amari Williams is playing at the all-SEC level. Jaxon Robinson was 6th man of the year, Big 12. He's Julius Erving finalist this year. But these guys, and it's kind of what I alluded to, is they all knew the probability of their journey to get to Kentucky, and they appreciated it more than a lot of players here recently have. I'm not saying that Cason Wallace didn't love being here, but to go from a school like Drexel or Fraley Dickinson, instead of coming out of high school as a 5-star where everybody wants you, they made their own journey to get to Kentucky rather than everybody wanting you get your free pick of the candy jar. So I think just that humbleness, that humility, and just their show of appreciation every step along this season is what's really set this team up.
Right. And it's just rare for teams to actually, keep their guys for so long. And it's cool to see kind of the benefits of what I imagine to be the transfer portal really being used in a way that can help a team like Kentucky rebuild on the fly. And it seems to me from the outside looking in that the transfer portal has opened up access for players to essentially jump from college to college from maybe they really impress in D3 one year and a D2 school sees, and then they call them up to there, and then they play Duke in the opening game and you score 20 against Duke, and it's like, oh well, maybe Duke will take you on their team now. It's like that thing where you beat someone and you get their best player on your team after. It's like almost something along those lines is now a part of it. And it's probably good for the bigger schools, maybe a lot more challenging for the lesser known schools to really maintain talent. So an interesting dynamic there. But at the end of the day, these guys just want a bigger platform to be seen. These guys mostly want to be pro players after this in some capacity, or they just want to extend their college basketball career as long as they can and play on the brightest lights, the biggest stage. And when you get to a place like Kentucky, that's where it comes calling. And on the team this year, if the tournament started today, I read the Kentucky would somehow be 8th in the SEC, which is crazy because they're such a talented team.
Yeah.
You go through all the teams in the SEC, it's like the top 25 is basically just the SEC. And then, but they just for perspective there, they would be 8th in the SEC, but probably a 4 seed in the actual March Madness tournament. That's how like lopsided the numbers sound in your head. But the big question mark seems to be with this team is just generally defense. They rank 9th on offense, but 57th on defense, which brings them to 18th overall via Bart Torvik in terms of their ability to beat another D1 program. They would have the 18th best chance to do something like that. So, what do you think they'll have to do to turn around the defense maybe for the rest of this season to really have a chance at winning the whole thing? Is that going to be the deciding factor for them?
Yeah, for sure. If you remember Alabama from last season, they really struggled defensively until like the last 4 weeks. Obviously, they went on to a Final Four. And Nate Oates talked about that after they played Kentucky back in January. He talked about, I mean, I think they had scored 96 or 100 or something against Kentucky that day. So put up quite a bit of points. But he pointed out, as long as a team can play defense for the last month, that's all that matters in terms of the postseason, anyways. Now that's a lot to ask of a team to go from sub 50, close to the 100 mark, to play elite level defense. Do I think Kentucky can be top 10 defensively? No. We got to be honest. But they have taken strides in that area. I think at their lowest, it was about mid to late January. They were over the 100 and defensive efficiency, so it was really, really struggling. But the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've kind of been in that 30 to 40 area. I think one metric even had them 13th for like a 3 or 4 game stretch. So they've really taken strides in that area. Lamont Butler being back, he dealt with some injuries, was out of 6 out of a 9 game stretch. That's really helped him. That's a guy that was a 3-time all defensive selection at San Diego State, defensive player of the year. And then Amari Williams, he was also a 3-time defensive player of the year at Drexel. So those 2 guys spearhead the defense. It's just kind of getting the other guys kind of acclimated. We've had to play a lot of freshmen, so guys that aren't used to the athleticism of the SEC. So that's been a learning curve for them, especially Travis Perry, who seems to get beat off the dribble quite a bit. But it all comes down to what you can do in March. So these guys, it looks like it's trending upwards in terms of defense. So don't think it's going to be elite, or anything like that. And I think most fans aren't expecting a Final Four national title, but they're playing a level of defense right now that could get them into a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 run.
Hey, they're playing it when it matters most, as you say. And so one reason I really wanted to talk was this recent game, Kentucky Oklahoma, just an all-time finish, an insane like fourth quarter. some of the stats for you just on Otega Oweh alone. He had 18 straight points. He was the only Kentucky player to score under the 9-minute mark. He had a career high 28 points. And on top of basically being the only player to score on his team for what felt like 12-minute stretch, he had the game winning block and the game winning shot. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that sequence in a game before. It's just very rare for someone to actually win the game with less than 5 seconds left and then come around and block the shot to save the game just for good measure, in case anyone was wondering. And in that 12-minute stretch, he just took over. And what was interesting throughout the game is it actually felt like he was having kind of a rough outing the first couple shots. Like, so a little context, this was a revenge game for Otega. He played it 2 years in Oklahoma, transferred to Kentucky for some of the reasons we're talking about, wanting to be on a bigger stage, a bigger platform. And his stats basically double on some of the box score stats. And then he comes in this huge matchup against Jeremiah Fears in Oklahoma, and Fears lives up to the matchup. He's coming all day, like an impressive prospect in his own right, like this insane footwork, touch on floaters, turnaround fades. But like, I just got to know what it was like seeing Otega in person in this event, because like in that last 10 minutes, he just lost his mind. Like he went from not being nervous, but maybe just a couple like jitters in, playing where you play. I don't think he had been there in like a year, but he spent 2 years of his life
Yeah.
playing there, and he misses a couple bunnies essentially, but he just makes winning plays constantly. That's what sticks out for me watching him. And then he just goes on this run with 12 minutes left. He hits a catch and shoot three, a little jump hook shot in the paint, a downhill runner. He has this nice sequence where he's kind of doing everything. He gets the rebound, brings it up, moves the ball around, ends it back with him, and just goes into this like patented spin move that he has down for an easy bucket. He's making tough floaters. The game-winning shot itself is just this like spinning flip shot. He barely gets up over his shoulder. So what was it like in the building, like seeing all this up close?
Yeah, so I would attribute it to LeBron in 2007, Game 5, Cavs Pistons. This is the collegiate version of that
Oh
game.
man,
I'm not comparing Otega and LeBron, but it is the collegiate
there
version,
it is.
Kentucky version of that game.
Oh, that's LeBron's like one of his all-time
Yeah,
moments. It took me a second, but yeah, I mean, he just like went off like you need a bucket. Here's 50 of them. Like,
yeah, and Kentucky was like you said, Otega that first half, like even some of the Kentucky media members like Otega's not playing well this game. This isn't Otega's night. Like kind of keying in on the fact that this is a revenge game. This was one he had marked on. And the second half, something switched. I don't know how he came out of the locker room. He refocused. Kentucky did get down, I think, 65, 61, 67, 61. And from that point, Otega scored 18 straight points. Like you said, 21 of the last 23, just went on a tear. And just seeing that, I mean, nobody could stop him. It was he started with a three and then obviously he's really good at finishing or getting into the lane. Now finishing he can be a little inconsistent with. But he was finishing everything in that game. You talked about the flip behind the back. I don't know if he even seen the rim on that shot. So it was just his night. It was pretty cool that he got to do it against his former school.
yeah, it was just an all-time moment. And on the draft side, like I think I said it earlier, he's a winning player, and to me, he just makes winning plays so consistently. Like he might be not the smoothest, like let's say, scorer offensively as a shooter. Like there is one go-to move. He has a mean spin move, but he's such a great athlete with that quick first step burst that he's good at that move. Like it creates the space he needs to get to the shot he likes, a tough floater near the rim. And like when you flash the shot touch, the shooting touch of a floater in many different ways, and the 3-point range, there's enough to buy there that there's a workable shot in the future. And the first, I try not to do direct comps, but in terms of a player that he kind of reminds me of with the style, would be like a Kentavious Caldwell Pope type, just a tough nails defender that's just gonna he's just gonna wreak havoc and mess up everything. He wants to be in a rock fight with you, and I've seen him live do this same type of thing against in the Kentucky's game against Alabama that we hit on. the Georgia matchup, the Duke matchup that they beat Cooper Flag and Duke early in the year with, incredible defense was a big thing all around for the team, but especially he just stands out. And he's one of those guys where I'll be scouting someone else in a game and I just have to write his name down because he's made 5 winning plays in a row.
Yeah.
And it happens in all these games. So I really wanted to highlight Otega Oweh for, what he's doing right now for the program for Kentucky. And also, like, what I'm worried about is he's just not going to enter the draft because of where his stock is at. So, like, there's a chance he might be here next year, which I want to fill out this lineup with you. I'm a huge Acaden Lewis fan from what I've seen him do. Malachi Moreno as well is a really strong big down low. They have Jasper Johnson also coming in. These are 3 4-stars recruits that are all committed to Kentucky next year, and they might bring back some of these guys. So, what will that lineup maybe look like next year? And do you think next year's team could really be even better with that huge class coming in and some of this depth and chemistry and continuity left over from this year's squad?
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's thinking is this was supposed to be Mark Pope had a month to put together this roster. He's had an entire year to build next season's roster. He started off by getting now Malachi Moreno and Jasper are very cool cases because they grew up in the state. Kentucky doesn't produce a lot of top 30 kids. Here recently they have with Reed Shepherd and things like that. But those 2 guys getting those stay home and play for Kentucky in this new era is pretty cool. And then Acaden Lewis was, I know he's a 4-star, but he was wanted by North Carolina, Duke, Kansas. He had his pick of blue bloods in Kentucky. Mark Pope went out and got him. UConn was even was actually the school he wanted to go to, and his dad made him go on a visit to Kentucky. And so that was an interesting story. His dad is sold on Mark Pope. You can look him up on Twitter. He's on there every game, so he's pretty vocal about his support. But I think, yeah.
Shout out his dad, man. Jared Lewis is on there. Like he'll let you know. Like he is available on Twitter and yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but shout out to the Lewis family. They're killing it out there. He's doing a lot of good things with in basketball, and just love to see him on the come up.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think Pope's kind of talked about how he wants to build a roster. It's kind of he splits it into 3 areas. You want to have your returners. So Otega is somebody that the staff currently plans to be back. Now he will test the draft waters, but kind of you talked about his stock. He can really increase that stock with another year. He comes back. He's probably an all SEC caliber player, maybe even a low 3rd-team All-American candidate, something like that. So that's definitely something to watch. Then you got Kirk Reese, who's got another year of eligibility, and Brennan Garrison. Now, they could look at the portal just because I don't know if you can be confident with them being your starting point guard or center. You kind of want to go get some big superstars in the portals, is what Pope is used. So they definitely got to get some guys in the portal. You're losing 6 players to they're exhausted their eligibility. So they're in on Nate Ament. I don't know if they pull that one off. That would be an interesting. It would be a very big win if they could. You definitely take a top 5 player anytime you can. But I think you're going to see Mark Pope and the staff. They've been looking to the portal a little bit. Now there's some tampering you can't really do, but I think they've got the guys keyed in on that they want, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do with a full portal window this time around.
No doubt. I mean, they're rebuilding this thing on the fly, and it's working. Like they're setting the culture with guys that fit the culture that he wants to build, and recruiting good basketball players here. That next year's class is loaded. I caught Acaden Lewis at the NBPA Top 100 camp. That's where I first saw his game, and like he was really impressive there. I've talked about him on the podcast a handful of times, and he's just a natural scorer, a natural creator. Like a guy that can run an offense, a lefty pull-up guy that has that, mid-range pull-up, the step back, the pull-up 3, can finish at the rim, can make when he plays on both ends, push the pace, and really tight handle, looks to set up other guys too. So just I'm glad he ended up at Kentucky, because now we should get to see kind of him with like the full arsenal of his weapons. Like we should, and rather than some of like you said, he had his pick of any top program in the country. He could have played for Duke, UNC, UConn. He chose Kentucky. He chose Mark Pope. Something his dad even mentioned is there's no guarantees with this coaching staff. Like everything is earned. There is no guarantee for minutes or starting roles or playing time. Like he's got to show up and win it and win the minutes and be confident in that. And that's what he plans to do. So it's cool to just hopefully see him like fully developed and also just all the tools at his disposal so he can see his stock rise as well for next year's draft. Because Acaden is mocked in like the late 20s right now. I think after a year at Kentucky, that's going to be a guy that's a lottery pick. Like I don't know where, because it's a very, very talented class. Like I would say the top 5 in that class would all have a case for like in that Cooper Flag discussion almost. And this year, like it's insane how loaded, especially at the top of that class is next year. So that's really the only thing holding him back, because I think he's like he'll be in that late lottery talks most likely by this time next year. So super cool to just see him and Jasper Johnson and Malachi Moreno like all come together, see how that looks. Like I think Moreno, especially like really brute force down low, smart defender, play finisher type, can bring that two-way, big man that they like to see down there. And so on some of the players as well, I was wondering, like Jaxon Robinson and Amari Williams really impressed me so far this year for the Kentucky program. And kind of was wondering what the long-term plans are for there. I know Jaxon just went down with an injury as well, which, no one wants to see. And shout out Lamont Butler as well is the other name I wanted to throw out there. What are their plans with the team, and, whether it's graduating, hitting a draft, transferring, or just staying put, like, who is prioritizing the team going forward? Because, Amari Williams stood out as well. Another guy that makes really smart plays, like a just a good defender, defensive playmaker type, is just off first glance what I saw that he was good at right away. And then Jaxon Robinson's just a shooter, like knockdown shooter out there. Like he's here to get buckets. So you always want those guys around. Where are some of these guys in the plans long term for the program?
Yeah, those 3 that you pointed out specifically, unfortunately, this is their last season. They've exhausted all their eligibility. So they're going to be going on to their own pro careers. I think you can even add Koby Brea into that mix. I think those 4 are probably the best pro prospects coming out of Kentucky this year. Amari Williams, the only thing that is going to hurt him is his inability to shoot the ball. If he can just get some type of consistent jump shot, he's an NBA. I mean, you can't teach big guys to take up the ball and pass like that. That's just, Buzz Williams called him the only and best 7-foot point guard in the country this year. So a high praise for, that dude's just big and he plays like a point guard without the shooting. It's crazy. Jaxon Robinson, obviously he could have been a draft pick last year, probably in the second round, probably somewhere in that same category this year. A big reason why he's out for the season is he has to have surgery, but he is expected to be back early June, so he'll be ready for the combine and all the team workouts and stuff. He's supposed to be 100% by then, so that was a big reason to go on and shut him down. Lamont Butler, he's been dealing with a shoulder injury for probably 2 months now, but the dude's playing through it. You can look up the brace he's wearing. It looks like the most restrictive piece of equipment I've ever seen on a basketball player. That it is like Bucky from Captain America is what that looks like, the metal arm. But that dude's playing through it. He's a warrior. He came from San Diego State kind of in a non-ball dominant role, off ball role, and everybody kind of questioned, was like, this dude's coming to play point guard. Like, I don't know about that. He's played 4 years of college, has never played point guard, and then he comes in and he's averaging over 4 assists a game. Had played at a really elite level up until he got injured and is kind of getting back into that strength. And then I think Koby Brea is also somebody that needs to be looked at. The dude's 6'7" and can shoot the heck out of the ball. He's shooting 47% from 3. He's as confident if he's open. He is as confident of a shooter that you will see, honestly, and basketball in general. The dude pulls up a 30-foot step back, and sometimes if he's in, it's going in. If he's on a roll, it's going in. So just his shooting ability and size, he's definitely going to be looked at. But those 4 will definitely get a shot at, whether it be the G League, whatever. I feel like those 4 guys will definitely get a shot next time.
Yeah, and good shout to Koby Brea as well. He's actually the highest ranked of all the prospects on ESPN's top 100 at the 60th slot. So there's only 59 picks. So he is officially the odd man out on their top 100 right this second. But Amari Williams and Jaxon Robinson are right there, 75, 78. Andrew Carr's at 91, Otega Oweh at 92. And so lastly, I would love to hear about these guys as people off the court, or any type of perception that you have of them off the court, and anything that you can share, whether it's a story, or just getting to know them, their personality, especially Otega, and then Mark Pope himself, but also just the type of player he's looking for this program. Like, is there a personality trait that seems to just be common through his scouting and recruitment process?
For sure. So, if you didn't know, Mark Pope is a Mormon. I know that kind of can have a negative connotation with some people, but he's really faithful. So, a lot of the players on the team are based in their faith, and they rely on God. So that's one thing that he doesn't necessarily require. He's obviously open to all talented basketball players, but it is something that this team specifically has a foundation on. So you talk to Otega or Andrew Carr or any of the seniors, they all talk about when things are getting rough, whether it be on the court, off the court, they have somebody to rely on, not just Pope, but also somebody they believe in. But also, he's just looking for good people. And my favorite thing to say about this team is um, they went this summer. They went to Eastern Kentucky, and they were just hit hard recently with some flooding. But several years ago, they were hit hard with a lot of flooding. I think 40. There are 40 some deaths in the area, and millions and millions in places that still haven't even rebuilt. And those guys went for a week and helped build homes for people and pass out needed necessities and stuff like that. So it just kind of um, it's a group that's really ingrained themselves in community, and I think that's what you're getting with all these players. Is you're going to get great players on the court, as you can see with some big wins. They've beaten Duke when you wouldn't expect it. They came back from 16 and beat Gonzaga. There's some questionable losses in there, but these guys are resilient, and their will to win. But they also they've been good people the whole time. You haven't had to worry about anybody going to parties. I think these guys are too old to think about partying, anything like that. You haven't heard any bad stories come out of them. They just play ball and hoop, and try to be good people. And I think that's all you can ask out of a basketball player, I think. So, pretty good guys.
Hey, that is definitely what you want to hear. And so I have one last stat I forgot to bring up earlier for you, and one last question. So, via Ben Pfeiffer on Twitter, he pointed out that the Mark Pope boost, that let's see, 6 different players have seen their assist to turnover ratio all jump up this year. Koby Brea 1.4 to 2.8, Otega 0.4 to 1.6, all the way down the line. Andrew Carr 1.0 to 3.1. So all of them are close to doubling in assist to turnover ratio. So, could you put any reason why that is for Mark Pope's style of play that he tries to emphasize?
Yeah, for sure. So Mark Pope, he has one of the best 5-out systems in college basketball. And after every game, typically the first stat he'll point out is the assist to turnover ratio. So I think his prioritization of that is one reason why it's been better. Now Amari Williams, he's had some tough stretches, but like you said, all those players have increased that. And I think it's just because Mark Pope's offense puts them in position to make plays. It's not really designed to have a lot of sets. It's kind of Amari Williams at the 5 actually runs a lot of offense from that position at the top of the key. So he just puts them in position to make reads, and I think that's interesting, just because he trusts his players to make the right play, and he entrusts them in doing so. So I think it's just the offense is one thing that is a new offense that none of these guys have played in. He's very intelligent. He went to medical school, so he knows what he's doing, and he knows. You can look up that story. He's told it a dozen times. But just the way his offense is set up encourages players to make plays. And you have guys that have played 4 or 5 years of college basketball. They've seen a lot. They know how to react to plays and different reads. And Mark Pope also helps them in terms of the analytics, make sure to show them what passes, where to be at, stuff like that. So I think it's just the analytical approach, and then him entrusting them to make long, experienced players let them make it.
Hey, when you know the cheat code to make coach happy, you're gonna be willing to do it. Maybe not throw those wild passes if he's gonna call you out on the turnovers
Brandon
the next
Garrison
day.
still has some work to do, but
He's the one that's lower on the list, I guess. We'll get the rest of the roster to bump up those averages soon. So one last curveball of a question. I know I said that twice already. So this
no,
is
you're
the
fine.
real last curveball of it basically just hit me of a what if or which would you choose? Do you think in terms of this team this year, we got the SEC tournament and hopefully this airs by then. It'll be close, but we also got March Madness. Which do you think they're? I won't say likelier to win. Do you think they're? But for the whole thing, so let's see. Do you think this Kentucky team has a better chance of winning the SEC tournament, where they would be starting as like the 8th seed right about now? So that means there's arguably 7 or 8 teams just as good as them in this conference. Or let's say make the Final Four in March Madness. They don't have to win the whole thing. They just got to make the Final Four or win the SEC. Which one do you think you would bet on?
It's gonna sound crazy, but the Final Four. And if you just
There you
look,
go.
if you just look at it, and it's just because as the 8th seed, the way it's set out is they would have to play Mississippi State. Mississippi State's what, like a 6 or 7 seed. So you're playing a 6 or 7 seed caliber in your first SEC tournament game. Then if you win that game, you would have to play Auburn. Auburn's going to be the number 1 overall seed. If you beat Auburn, then you have to either play Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. So there's 3 more number 1 or 2 seeds. So it's just Kentucky would have to win 4 games to win the SEC tournament, and you're playing 1 6 or 7 caliber seed team, and then 3 top 2 seed caliber teams. So it's just kind of a gauntlet. Whereas if you play this seed of the tournament, they're going to be a 3 or 4 seed, so they're going to play 14, 13, something like that. And so you get an easy. It's supposed to be easy. Kentucky's lost a lot of those of late. Supposed to be easy first round game. Then you may play some better competition in the second round, and obviously you're playing the 2 seed in that second weekend, so it gets a little harder. But yeah, the SEC's just it's crazy. it's like nothing, especially as weak as it has been, and kind of John Calipari's terror of rain that he had earlier. They went undefeated in the SEC twice, so it's just kind of a crazy jump just because of how much each program has kind of invested, and it's paid off to all this. I mean, I think 4 of the top 6 seeds are SEC teams right now. It's just
it's wild. It's wild. That's why I had to ask, because like a common question. You wouldn't think like making the Final Four might be easier than winning your conference title, but like you laid out the math. Like that is a gauntlet, as you say, to go through the SEC. I mean, just put the teams and the rankings down on paper, and you can see it for yourself. That
a top 4 seed is going to might go 500 in conference, and like what?
That's wild. It's just wild. Like the entire. I was going through the entire SEC. You pick any team, and they all have to face like 10 top 20 teams on their schedule. It's just unfair, but that's just where the game is at. And like you said, how much they've invested in these programs, and it's cool to see the benefits where it feels like every game has a little more meaning, and it's great to see that especially in the regular season, and now this tournament where like you always want to see the best against the best. So the idea that the whole conference is just lined up with it's great to see. And yeah, I really appreciate you hopping on today, Tristan. It was a lot of fun talking, Kentucky hoops and hearing a little bit about your process, your story. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share it.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can talk about Kentucky for several more weeks this season. So,
I like it.
Appreciate you having me on.
Let's see this run here in March. The madness begins. I love it. Appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.